Have you ever been sitting still, working, eating, or even just turning your head for a second, and suddenly noticed your cat staring at you without blinking? Not meowing, not walking over, not doing anything at all, just staring at you. And the strange thing is that look often gives people a feeling that is hard to describe. Sometimes it feels adorable, sometimes it feels mysterious, and sometimes it even feels a little eerie, like your cat knows something you do not. But what many cat owners misunderstand is this. When a cat stares at you, it is not always just curiosity, and it is definitely not always a meaningless habit. Behind that silent gaze, there is often a whole layer of signals tied to instinct, emotion, observation, trust, and even the way your cat places you within their world. In other words, there are times when your cat is not silent at all. They are just speaking with their eyes. And the deeper you look into it, the more you realize. This one of the clearest ways cats show their emotions is when they do nothing but look at you. 1. First, cats stare at you because you are the most important thing in their environment. Cats do not observe everything randomly the way people often assume. They pay especially close attention to anything that directly affects their sense of safety, daily routine, and access to resources. And inside a home, the human is almost always at the center of all of that. You are the one who opens doors. You are the one who brings food. You are the one who creates noise. You are the one who moves around the most. You are the biggest source of change in your cat's environment. So when your cat stares at you, sometimes it simply means this. They are watching the most important thing in their territory. A lot of people joke that cats stare because they are judging us. And yes, that idea is funny. But from a behavioral point of view, what your cat is really doing is something much more instinctive, watching an individual who has a major influence on their life. That is not necessarily distance, it is attention. And sometimes the fact that your cat pays that much attention to you is actually a sign that you hold a very big place in their world. 2. Sometimes cats stare at you because they are reading your emotions. This is something many people do not notice. Cats may not show emotion as openly as dogs, but that does not mean they are not paying attention to the emotional state of the humans around them. A lot of cats will watch their owners very closely during certain moments when you feel sad, when you cry, when you are exhausted, when you lie still longer than usual, or when your overall energy feels noticeably different. Many people assume that is just a coincidence, but in reality, cats are extremely sensitive to small changes in routine posture, tone of voice, movement speed, and facial expression. In other words, that steady stare can sometimes be your cat's way of checking, "Are you okay today? You seem different than usual. What is going on?" Cats do not ask with words. They look, they stay nearby, they watch quietly, and sometimes that alone is already a very deep form of presence. That is one of the things that moves people so deeply after living with cats for a long time. Because the longer you live with them, the more you begin to realize they are not as emotionally distant as they seem. They just love in a much quieter way. 3. But sometimes cats stare at you because they are waiting for something from you. This is probably the most common reason, yet it is often oversimplified. When a cat stares at you in the morning around mealtime near a door beside the litter box, or the moment you pick up something familiar, there is a good chance they are waiting for something. Waiting to be fed, waiting for you to open the door, waiting for you to play, waiting for you to get up, waiting for an action they have learned from your daily routine. What matters here is that cats are very good at learning human habits. They remember the small patterns that repeat every day. When you walk into the kitchen, food may be coming. When you sit in your chair, work is about to begin. When you pick up your keys, you are probably about to leave. When you turn off the lights, bedtime is near. So a lot of staring is actually a form of prediction. Your cat is not just looking at you, they are waiting for what happens next. And once you understand that the stare no longer feels empty, it holds memory, routine, and expectation all at once. 4. A prolonged gaze can sometimes be a sign of trust, not a threat. In the animal world, direct staring can sometimes mean tension or challenge. So at this point, many people naturally wonder, does it mean my cat is upset when they look at me for a long time? The answer is yes, it can, but not always. What really matters is your cat's full body language. If your cat is looking at you with a relaxed body, normal ears, a still tail, and a comfortable sitting or lying posture, and sometimes even gives you a slow blink, then that gaze is usually not confrontational. In fact, it may be a very quiet form of connection. Especially when a cat looks at you and then slowly narrows their eyes or gives a slow blink, many cat owners see that as a kind of eye kiss. Not because cats are trying to imitate humans, but because, in feline body language, softening the eyes in front of someone is often a sign of feeling safe. Put more emotionally, sometimes your cat is not looking at you to investigate you. They are looking at you simply to be with you in the quiet way only a cat can. 5. But not every stare is a sign of love, and this is something you need to read correctly. This part is very important. A lot of people assume that whenever a cat stares at them, it must mean affection, attachment, or sweetness. But in reality, some fixed stares are actually signals of discomfort, caution, or overstimulation. If your cat's stare comes with wide pupils, ears turned sideways or pinned back, whiskers pushed forward, a tense body, or a lightly flicking tail, then this is no longer a relaxed look. At that point, your cat may be saying, "I do not like this. Do not come any closer. I am not comfortable right now." A lot of people ignore the body and focus only on the face, which is why they misread what the cat is feeling. And when that happens often enough, humans can accidentally cross boundaries and weaken the cat's sense of trust. The deeper lesson here is this: loving a cat is not only about enjoying their gentle moments, it is also about knowing when to step back when they are trying to tell you they need space. Understanding an uncomfortable stare matters just as much as understanding a loving one, because both are part of your cat's real language. 6. Sometimes cats stare at you simply because they feel calm when they can see that you are there. This is a very beautiful kind of behavior, but it is not talked about very often. Many cats do not need to sit on you. They do not need to rub against you constantly. They do not always need to ask for petting. They just need to be near you. And from time to time, they look in your direction to make sure you are still there. It sounds simple, but emotionally, it is very meaningful. For many cats, your steady presence becomes part of their everyday sense of safety, like a familiar chair, a familiar window spot, a familiar scent, a familiar daily rhythm. So when your cat looks at you from across the room, watches you for a while, and then simply stays where they are, sometimes they are not asking for anything at all. They are just reassuring themselves through your presence. And when you see it that way, a cat's long stare starts to feel very different. It no longer feels cold or mysterious. It feels more like a very quiet message. I can see that you are here, and that is enough. 7. Why your cat sometimes stares at you at night and makes it feel so strange. This is one of the moments many cat owners remember most clearly. You wake up in the middle of the night, turn your head and see your cat sitting still staring at you in the dark. That moment can make cats seem deeply mysterious. But in reality, the reason is usually far less spooky than people imagine. Cats tend to be more active in the early morning and evening. Their biological rhythm is different from ours. So while you are asleep, your cat may still be fully awake, alert, listening, watching, or waiting for you to move. Nighttime is also quieter. There is less noise, less movement, and fewer distractions. That makes a cat's watchful behavior stand out even more. Your cat may be monitoring the environment. They may be curious because you moved under the blanket. They may want to wake you up. Or they may simply be checking that the large, familiar creature beside them is still okay. What makes the moment feel eerie is not that your cat is suddenly more mysterious than usual. It is that darkness makes every gaze feel deeper. 8. What your cat is really trying to say when they stare at you. When you put it all together, a cat may stare at you for many different reasons: to observe, to wait for something to read your emotions, to monitor the environment, to feel reassured, to show trust, or sometimes to set a boundary. But what all of those reasons have in common is this: a cat's stare is rarely meaningless. Cats are not the kind of animals that always use big, obvious actions to express how they feel. Many of the most important things they communicate are hidden in very small signals: the place they choose to lie down, the way they follow you, the way they touch you, and even the way they look at you. What makes this behavior so special is that it asks humans to slow down in order to understand it. You cannot understand a cat's gaze if you only glance at it for a second. You have to notice the context. You have to read the body language. You have to pay attention to what was happening in that moment. You have to live closely enough with your cat to recognize the difference between a stare that means feed me, a stare driven by curiosity, a stare filled with trust, and a stare asking you to stop. And maybe that is one of the most beautiful things about living with cats. They do not hand all of their emotions to you in an easy, obvious form. They ask you to become more sensitive, more patient, more observant. So the next time your cat sits somewhere and stares at you, do not laugh it off too quickly and move on. Because in that quiet moment, your cat may be saying far more than you realize. 9. When you look at this behavior as a whole, there is one very important thing to remember. Cats do not just live beside you. They are constantly quietly reading you, remembering you, and responding to your presence in very subtle ways. A long stare does not always mean the same thing. Sometimes it is expectation. Sometimes it is curiosity. Sometimes it is a check-in. Sometimes it is a boundary. But sometimes it is also one of the quietest ways a cat says this: you are an important part of their world. The biggest lesson here is not to dismiss a cat's small signals as meaningless. The less dramatic an animal is in showing emotion, the more important those subtle signs often become. Understanding a cat does not begin with dramatic moments. It begins with being calm enough to read a look, observant enough to notice the difference in body language, and loving enough not to force the cat to communicate in a way that makes sense only to humans. So, if you have ever caught your cat looking at you for a long time, very deeply, very quietly, there is a good chance it was never just a look. It may have been a silent conversation simply waiting for you to learn how to understand it.